What's good, beautiful people? I'm your humble host, Tone DeShields II from JAKIB Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. As you guys can see, I'm joined by a very, very special guest. You heard him on ESPN radio for Lehigh Valley in South Jersey, 97.5 The Fanatic, SiriusXM, and SB Nation Radio with Tony Bruno, the Swing It and Dang It podcast, Fox PHL's The Gambler. You've also seen him as a sideline reporter for Temple University football, and he's written for Metro Philly. And now he's on JAKIB Media's The Middle with Barrett Brooks, the one and only Harry Mays. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Tone, I'm great, man. It's great to be with you here on Chalk It Up Sports. I mean, you rattling off all that stuff, man, that's a lot of jobs.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you think about it, and I'm just a rookie to the game, right? And what I'm learning very early is you have to have your hands in so many different pots. You have to make sure you're teachable.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So first and foremost, like I said to you off air, super grateful for you for taking the time to chop it up with me, not just about Philly sports, but also just about your journey in media.
Yeah, man, glad to do it. I remember being where you are wasn't that long ago. It seems like it wasn't that long ago, but when you think about it, it's 22 years or so when I was trying to make the transition from, sort of a regular job, being a sales guy into, being on sports talk radio, which is, just something that I fell in love with during the 90s, when WIP was going, great guns. And the Fan up in New York, because I did a lot of, travel between both the cities, selling medical supplies and stuff. And I was always listening to sports radio. And I was just like, man, I'd love to do that. And it's like, how do you do it? And then I just started, sort of looking around and, I heard some advertising on both the stations for the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, CSB as it's known now. And I just said, why not? I'll just give it a shot. So I went out and checked out the school and, said, hey, this sounds pretty good. I think I'm going to give it a try. If not now, it'll never happen. I was sort of at that point. I wasn't married at the time. I'd been divorced and I have no kids. So I didn't really, I was sort of like I could do it, some
freedom.
A lot. Yeah, exactly. And, I had a job where I was making good money and I just, went to the classes at night and then started making tapes and, buying time on the weekends and, in these brokered stations that are, in and around the Delaware Valley and just started doing shows. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was doing, I was on the air for an hour or 2 hours a week. And, it became like the whole focus of my week. And I started to be, to think like, I don't want to sell stuff anymore. I want to be on the radio. And, I got a break. One of the guys that I was in the school with called me up and said, hey, I got this job in the Lehigh Valley doing a show once a week for 2 hours. I think it was 2 or 3 hours. And he said, I don't want to do it by myself. I want to do it with you. And I said, okay. It was Wednesdays from 4 to 7. It was 3 hours and 4 to 7 p.m., a pretty good time slot. And he said, the only problem is they don't have enough money to pay you right away. And I'm like, well, okay, I don't care. I just, was selling insurance then at the time. And I'd drive up to, the Lehigh Valley and every Wednesday afternoon and do the show. And pretty soon that grew into 2 nights a week. Still couldn't pay you. But now I was starting to be like, hey, you got to at least make it worth my while spending money in gas and tolls and all this stuff. So they finally found some money in their budget to, to at least throw me some couple of dollars per hour. So and that grew. And then they wanted us on 5 days a week. And then they started to pay me, a decent enough wage to consider that. And that's when I left the insurance business. I was in medical sales, then went to commercial insurance and worked for a buddy of mine for a couple of years. And that's when I sold back my book of business to him and just, dove in the deep end of the pool in sports radio up in the Lehigh Valley. And that evolved into Philadelphia and away we go.
Man, the journey is clearly well traveled. And
it is. Yeah.
Some things that stuck out to me and everything you said was you had a vision and you had the utmost faith in your talents. You knew what you wanted to do and you had a clear-cut goal. Right. As a matter of fact, you essentially went against all odds. You went against the norm, the conventional job, because you had a 9 to 5. You could have stuck where it was safe.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was in my mid-30s, and I had a house, I had a motorcycle, I had a job, and
Oh,
and I sold the house, I sold the Harley Davidson, I pitched it all, and moved into an apartment, to start this whole thing. So, but like I said, I was at a point in my life where I could do it because I didn't have a lot of encumbrances that I had to take care of. So it's kind of
wow.
fortunate.
Just made that there's power in that, the power to just be able to just bet on yourself. Of course you had the freedom, the extra time,
Right.
no real obligations, but it takes a lot out of you, not just mentally but emotionally, to be willing to bet on yourself in such a hard-nosed arena such
Yeah.
as sports media.
Yeah, and especially in this town too, because it's very competitive. It's a demanding job working in the sports media in a town like Philadelphia, New York, Boston. It's not like I was coming up in some small place, where maybe it was a little bit easier to get noticed. Like it's hard to get noticed in this town if you're starting from nothing. So I like to say I was very desperate. I think I
Wow.
needed a little bit of desperation in order to do what I did. So,
Wow.
but I was very lucky. I worked with a lot of great people and had the opportunity to work with a lot of great talents. I mean, you mentioned some of them in the intro. I mean, there was Jody McDonald I did a show with, who's a legend. Tony Bruno, who you mentioned. He's probably on the Mount Rushmore of sports talk when it all's said and done. As far as he started ESPN Radio, he started Fox Sports Radio. He's been there, done that, and
A
everything.
legend.
Yeah, exactly. And I worked with John DeBella, of course, the great rock and roll disc jockey and show host over on WMMR and MGK, and I work with him at MGK. So, I've been around a lot of great, talented people, and I think, I've tried to learn something from all of them.
Wow. So how did you end up at JAKIB Media? Because I love what you guys are doing over there. I love Birds 365, the middle,
Mm-hmm.
the National Football Show with Dan Sileo. I truly admire what you guys are building over there. And I tune into you guys daily, morning, lunchtime, and on the car ride home. So how did that partnership, how did that marriage become what it is now?
Well, the founder of JAKIB Media is a guy named Joe Kraus, and I had worked with him. He had been working with someone, the Fanatic in sales. He was sort of kind of his own independent contractor, but he worked with the Fanatic, selling shows and advertising and so forth. So I had gotten to know him there, and when things broke down between me and the Fanatic, and in a contract situation, and I left, he reached out to me and Aton, and was like, hey, I'm thinking about, putting together a show a couple of hours a day on 97.3 in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN, where Mike Gill is, and, the guys down in Atlantic City. And I said, well, I don't want to drive to Atlantic City every day. He goes, no, you do it from here. And, we're going to try to force, or get people to sign up for their app. And that way they can listen to you anywhere, and you don't have to be in Atlantic City. I'm like, okay, let's go for it. So that's where it started. And that lasted a little over a year, and things broke down there. And then the SiriusXM thing came up, and I jumped at the chance to do that with Tony, and Joe worked with us on that project as well.
Wow.
And that didn't last very long. We were talking about sports when there was no sports during the pandemic. Those first 4, 5, 6 months were really brutal because there really wasn't, anything going on. I think, the PGA Tour started first to bring back, live sporting events. And other than that, then we finally worked our way into the NBA bubble and so forth. And, you're working your way towards football, and then the show ended. We got thrown off the channel because there was some complaints about something that Tony had said, and it's a very volatile environment today. So we got thrown off, and that ended. So then I'm stuck here for a couple months with nothing, and that's when Joe came back and said, hey, let's start up this project. We were with Philly Voice on their website, and then we were also on Sports Map Radio and his YouTube channel that he was just starting. So all of that, has now gone to just the YouTube channel, which is, like you said, the middle with Barrett Brooks, who I love working with, and, Dan Sileo, and then the Birds 365 guys, which is Jody Mack and John McMullen in the morning. So it's kind of almost like a full day of content. And that was all through Joe Kraus at JAKIB Media.
Wow! Shout out to
Yeah.
Joe Kraus, the Maverick.
Yeah.
There's so much resiliency in that story that you just explained, and you talking about Birds 365, the National Football Show, the Middle. You guys touch on so many different topics. Not
Yeah.
just football, especially with the Middle. You guys touch on almost everything, not just football, but you guys talk about life. You guys cover
Yeah.
the NBA. Speaking of the NBA, of course, the most notable news in the NBA circles right now is the James Harden Ben Simmons trade. Ben Simmons is heading to Brooklyn with Seth Curry. Well, he is in Brooklyn now with Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, the 2 first-round picks, and James Harden is in Philly with Paul Millsap. So, what were your initial thoughts about this deal, and what the Sixers got from it, what they had to give up? What were just your initial knee-jerk reaction thoughts when things finally became official?
Well, I was really, pleasantly surprised that it actually happened. I was one of those that was thinking, yeah, wake me when it actually happens. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing about, Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal or all these other targets, the guys in Sacramento, Halliburton and a couple other guys, and all these rumors that were floated around ever since the season started, and Ben Simmons wasn't there and doing this holdout sort of thing. And I was all ready to move on from him. I'd been ready to move on from Ben Simmons for a couple of years. In fact, I forget what year it was in the draft when Memphis had the 2nd overall pick. I was advocating sending Ben Simmons to Memphis. I don't even know if they would have done the deal, but I'm like, just make them do it and go get Ja Morant. That's a point guard, that, because I love Ja Morant, and now he's blown up to being, one of the best young players in a loaded, talented field in the NBA. But so I've been ready to move on from Simmons. I just figured he was never going to become the player that we wanted him to be or expected him to be or thought he'd be. And, so you had to do something. And you're starting to hear, man, Daryl Morey's, he's overplaying his hand. He's lucky to get 50 cents back on the dollar for Ben Simmons. You just got to do a deal to do a deal. And I was just like, you know what? No, don't do that. Hold out, see what happens. Maybe you go into the offseason and you started hearing these rumblings about Harden wanting to leave Brooklyn. And, I didn't know if I believed it at the time, but it obviously was true. And when I found out they made the deal, I'm like, holy shit. Like, that's all they had to give up. Like, that's all they gave up. And I mean, Stephen A. Smith, who's great, but he's sweating us losing Seth Curry in this deal, saying that we didn't win the deal. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's not Steph Curry. It's Seth Curry. Let's be honest. Drummond gave you a nice 10, 12 minutes a night and spelled Embiid. And, they're going to have to figure out a way to, to give Joel, his backup. And I don't know if that's Millsap. I don't know if they get a guy, on a buyout, here in these next couple of weeks. That happens all the time in the NBA. But man, to get James Harden, if he is motivated to play, and I think he is, him and Embiid on the court together it's just unbelievable. And they're going to live at the free throw line.
Oh,
Both
without
of
a
them.
doubt. Without a doubt.
Okay, pick and roll situations. I mean, Embiid's never had a player like this. There aren't many players like this. I mean, I remember going back, the first time I was really exposed to Harden was when he played for Arizona State, and they beat my Temple Owls in the NCAA tournament. And they did a pretty good job, if I remember, on Harden that day. But there's a guy named Prendergast on that team that I think had a bunch of buckets, and Temple ended up losing. But, I had no idea from that James Harden that he would develop into the beard. This guy, he's incredible when he wants to play. And I think he's going to want to play. I think he's wanted to be here. I believe him. I take him for his word that Philly was where he wanted to be. I think, Morey knew that from his experience in Houston. And there was obviously he was like a great white whale for Daryl Morey. And, I hope this all works out because, I'm one of those that believes I love Embiid to death. But I think there's a limited window to, when he's going to be playing at this level. At some point, maybe it's the Philadelphia fan in me that at some point he's physically going to break down just by the way he plays. So I think we're dealing with a limited time frame to maximize him and get to a championship. And, I'm hoping that this guy is finally the guy to help get it done.
No, you said a lot. The fact that Simmons, he never even showed you, as a matter of fact, that he wanted to be better. There was no there was no indication, no semblance in his game or his demeanor or how he carried himself that he was committed to being great. And you saw the stark difference in how he carried himself versus how Joel Embiid carried himself. This team lost out on Jimmy Butler because they wanted to prioritize Ben Simmons'
I love Jimmy Butler too.
And too often, this organization had placed Ben Simmons' needs at the forefront. They paid him. You know, they made a commitment to help him improve at his shooting. He wanted to work with his own guys. You know, they decided to choose you over Jimmy Butler. You know what I mean? Like, this team had essentially the city bent over backwards to make Ben Simmons absolutely comfortable. You know, there was a moment. I went to Game 5 of last year's second round against Atlanta Hawks in the city. My first playoff game, and it was the atmosphere.
Sorry to hear that.
I know. It was a heartbreaker, but the atmosphere was electric. They had the fog going. It was literally playoff football. You smelled it in the air. You felt it in the air. You can cut the tension. You can cut the emotion with a knife.
Right.
And I watched this man crumble before my very eyes. Now, granted, Doc Rivers, that team blew a 26-point lead. That's a team problem. That's a coaching problem. But when you don't shoot the ball for 3 or 4 or 5 games in a row in the fourth quarter, that's a problem. But he's in Brooklyn now, and he got exactly what he wanted. He wanted to play the mental health card, and I'm very, very much on the fence about that. But you know, overall, I love the fact that you mentioned it. We, in my opinion, we didn't really give up as much as I thought we would have to give up for James Harden.
No,
you know, like draft picks mean nothing in the NBA.
Who cares about the draft picks? Exactly.
Who really cares about that? But Joel Embiid, you mentioned there's a window. He's a big man, 7 feet tall, weighs about 260, 70 pounds plus. And he moves like a deer, moves like a ballerina.
He thinks he's a point guard sometimes.
Oh my God, the Euro step. They got smoked by Boston last night. But man tried. He tried to step. He tried to James Harden step back. It blew my mind. But you know, he's a freak of nature, and the Sixers have to capitalize on this window because you know the time is now for James Harden. He's in his 30s. He's about 32. Right. Joel Embiid, he's approaching 30 as well because he started his career a little bit late due to injury. You have guys like Tobias Harris, who has a contract that's strangling you right now. You have an up-and-comer in Tyrese Maxey. You have Matisse Thybulle, who I would love to have. I love Maxey. And then Matisse Thybulle, I wish he improved more on offense, but his defense is unmatched. Arguably a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Right. I think the bench could be better. Like you said, we should dip into that buyout market for another big man. But I do like the fact that we have a handful of stretch fours like Paul Reed, like Paul Millsap, like Niang. So the team is most definitely positioned to win a championship now. How do you think Joel Embiid and James Harden will coexist on the court along with the other players?
I think it's going to be great because, I think the spacing will be so much better with a guy like Harden on the floor, out on the perimeter. I mean, that was one of the big problems with Ben Simmons on the court with Embiid is that you didn't have to honor him at all, and you could pack the lane in. You could go down and double on Embiid, whatever. You didn't have to respect Simmons whatsoever with regarding the half-court offense. Out on the perimeter, they knew he wasn't going to shoot. Now, if he could drive to the basket, that's fine, but he didn't even want to go to the free throw line. And when that's a bad combination when you're trying to win a playoff game in the fourth quarter, like you mentioned. You got a guy who's going to have the ball in his hands, and he doesn't want to get fouled because he doesn't want to shoot free throws, and he won't shoot a jump shot. Now, what can you do with a guy like that? I mean, literally, I got so frustrated, watching him, and I don't care what he gets paid. They're all overpaid, okay? I mean, James Harden makes $500,000 a game, okay, whether he plays or not. Think about that, okay? All right? But Ben Simmons, is paid like a superstar, and he would dribble the ball up over half court, give it up to somebody else, and then go and hide down in the low block. That's literally what he did on offense, and then maybe he'd go get a rebound. And he played great defense. Don't get me wrong. He was a tremendous defender. He can guard all 5 positions. There's mega value in that. But you've got to give me something offensively. And you can't shy away from a dunk in a big spot. I mean, that was, the tipping point for, I think, most fans. I was already there. But when you saw that, I'm like, oh, my God, like this guy can't come back on the team. It's over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What were your initial thoughts on his press conference and James Harden's press conference,
I
respectively?
didn't even watch him. I'm just going to be honest with you. I didn't care about Ben Simmons' press conference, to be honest with you. I cared about Harden's, but I didn't watch it. And because I'm just like, I'm so sick of this whole thing. I want to see guys on the court playing basketball. And we're not even going to have that with Harden until after the All-Star break, apparently, because of this hamstring issue. And that's fine.
Hamstring.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Well, it was a hamstring when he was in Brooklyn. I guess there is something to it.
But you got to think about it. They're trying to, because he claimed hamstring in Brooklyn, they're going to try to add credence to it, try to hold him out till after the All-Star break, so they can sort of reaffirm that, hey, he was dealing with something. We want to make sure he's healthy.
Right. And the All-Star break's this weekend, so it's fine. I just can't wait until, what is it, March the 10th, Brooklyn and the Sixers. I hope
in Philly. Come on.
I hope to God that Ben Simmons is ready and has the stones to suit up and play that night. And I can't wait. That is must-see TV like there hasn't been since maybe the last big Eagles playoff game.
Oh man,
yeah,
absolutely. The fans are most definitely going to hold him accountable.
Oh yeah,
without a doubt. And Philadelphia fans, we're relentless. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and the mindset, we bleed green. The energy we provide in these stadiums and these arenas, it can't be quantified. And you think about not just the Philadelphia 76ers fans, but you think about the Philadelphia Eagles fans. We are sometimes we're rabid, and we can be contained. But now the Super Bowl is officially behind us. The offseason has officially begun, and the draft order is officially set. So the Philadelphia Eagles are picking at 15, 16, and 19 as it stands right now. 3 first-round picks, managed to finesse the Indianapolis Colts for their first-round pick. So what are your thoughts on what moves the Philadelphia Eagles should make entering this offseason? Not just in free agency, but also in this draft, because they have so many glaring needs to me outside of just the quarterback position.
They do. And, first and foremost, I have to, if I'm Howie Roseman, really do my investigation into Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson. I have to find out and basically be told they don't want to play. They will not play in Philadelphia before I shut down, the avenues of communication. That's my priority. Number one is Watson or Wilson, because as nice as a guy and, as great of a young player as Jalen Hurts is, I don't think he's the guy. And I don't really have time to see if he can develop into the guy. The NFL really isn't about developing into the guy. It's kind of you either are or you aren't, especially at that position. So I got to exhaust, all options to try to see if I could get either of those two players. Those are the two guys that I'm interested in. I'm not interested in Garoppolo. I'm not interested, maybe a David Carr. If Las Vegas wanted to part ways with him, I might be interested in that. But there's not a whole lot of other veteran quarterbacks that really interest me outside of those two guys that I mentioned. The problem is there's so many other, and Barrett and I went through this once or twice on the show in the last couple of weeks, of all the other teams in the NFL that could be or definitely are not happy with their quarterback situation. And it's about half the league. So, there might be multiple destinations, possible destinations for all these guys that may be even more attractive than Philadelphia. And I understand all that, but I have to check that out first. Let's say, that's a no-go. Well, then, I've got to use at least two. I'm not interested in a quarterback in the first round, to be honest, at 15, 16, or 19. And I'm not moving up to get one because nobody's really knocking my socks off, okay? Malik Willis might be a nice player, but I don't think he's worth trading up for. And I think you're going to have to trade up to get him. The same thing with the Pitt quarterback. Might be a nice player, but I'm not trading up to get him. If one falls in my lap at 15, or, if Malik Willis suddenly slid and is waiting for the Eagles to draft him at 15, I'd probably have to do it, but I don't see that happening. So if that's the case, then I'm going to use at least two of those picks on the defensive side of the ball, an edge rusher, maybe a safety or a cornerback, something like that. And maybe I used, the third one in a trade to try to get into the first round next year with multiple picks. And Howie's a wizard with that. We complain a lot about Howie and his personnel choices and screwing up with the first and second round draft picks quite a bit. But he's really good at knowing the board and being able to wheel and deal and get more assets, sort of a hinky situation, in the draft, whether it be this year or next year. So I would trust that he might be able to do that.
Yeah, I completely understand your perspective because, like you said, the NFL, it never has been a real develop a guy type of league. That, like you said, it's either you're the guy
It's tough.
or you're not the guy because
Right.
there's such a limited amount of games, such a limited amount of opportunities, and these front offices, they're investing a lot of money in these teams, and they want production right away. And you think about the way Joe Burrow balled out, not just all season, but entering the playoffs, and how he made it to the Super Bowl with the worst offensive line in the NFL. That completely moved the needle for a lot of these young quarterbacks. And then you think about the other side with Matthew Stafford being a veteran who got traded from Detroit to LA to a situation that was pretty ready-made, but ultimately we knew Matthew Stafford had the talent. But Matthew Stafford's narrative sort of changed the game for how these organizations are going to approach building their teams, as far as, hey, I have a roster that's pretty legit. Maybe if I trade for a guy, that can be my team in the NFL. So the Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford narratives, respectively, have really changed the dynamic in the way these organizations are going to approach building their teams.
Yeah, and both of those guys are number one overall picks. I mean, that was the second time, I believe, in Super Bowl history that you had number one overall picks facing off against one another. The other time was Cam Newton against Peyton Manning years ago. So you think about that. To get a guy at number one, there is no Joe Burrow in my opinion in this draft. There's no Matthew Stafford in this draft, but a couple of these guys may end up being decent or pretty good, but I'm not trading up to get any of them.
Yeah,
I think Carolina will probably take one. Denver might take one. I think they're going to be gone. The two of them will be gone in the first probably 10, 12 picks.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned a bunch of these other organizations need quarterbacks,
Yeah.
but we have something these organizations don't necessarily have, and that's actually the capital, the assets to actually make a move.
Right.
And most of these organizations, especially when you think about the teams such as Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson and the Houston Texans with Deshaun Watson, respectively, they are trying to bounce back from these situations if they move those guys. They're not trying to just trade those guys for a pack of peanuts, right?
Right.
They want to be able to rebuild their roster and have a quick turnaround.
That's
and
true.
We're the only organization in the league right now that has enough capital to be able to provide the Seahawks and or Houston Texans with the assets to have a quick enough turnaround while also moving on from their franchise guys. So now, I know you mentioned Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. Who do you and we'll close it with this, and then I'll have one final question for you. But which quarterback would you rather have? Would you rather have the trusty veteran in Russell Wilson, who's proven and shown that he can win a Super Bowl, or would you rather have the young vet, the guy who's still up and coming, still developing, who has tremendous upside, very young, in Deshaun Watson? Which side of the fence are you leaning on?
Well, probably Deshaun Watson, because like you said, he is younger. Had a whole year here where he didn't even play, where there was no miles on the tread. But on the tread, Russell Wilson, I think, can play for, he didn't look too good this year. He injured that finger, and I don't know that he ever really fully recovered from that. He didn't look quite the same even when he came back. But I still think he can play for another, 5-7 years. It's not like he's near done. But Deshaun Watson is, to me, a top 5 quarterback, and he's younger. And I just think that, maybe a Houston team, may not. They're talking a big game, like they want 15 first-round draft picks. I'm being facetious, but they want the farm, and I would ask for it too. But we saw with maybe Daryl Morey's got to get in there with Howie Roseman and help work this thing out.
Howie Roseman and Daryl Morey, they're both salacious individuals.
Exactly right. But I would probably say Deshaun Watson at this point.
I understand. Yeah. I think from the perspective of the now and future, I would definitely go Deshaun Watson as well. But we'll close it with this question. In your opinion, Which franchise has the brightest outlook towards the now and future? The Philadelphia Eagles or the Philadelphia 76ers?
I'm glad you didn't include the other two franchises, okay? Because I don't even know if we have a hockey franchise anymore
Oh,
at this
man.
point.
Speaking of that, Claude Giroux's looking to get out of here.
Right. Well, yeah, he is. He's going to finally waive that no trade clause, and I don't blame him for trying to get to Colorado. They've got a real legitimate shot to win a cup. But yeah, out of the six, I'd have to say the Sixers because right now with Harden and Embiid and Tobias Harris and a collection of some of these younger guys, I think the East is winnable. I really do. And who out? Who's the team in the West? Phoenix doesn't. Golden State probably I guess would be the team. Other than what maybe Phoenix, but I think the Sixers are the team. With the earliest shot and maybe the most likely shot to get something here first.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I may agree with you on that. Just like you said, James Harden, Joel Embiid, you really can't argue with that. And the landscape of the NBA right now, the West is definitely competitive with Phoenix Suns, Golden State Warriors.
Because Denver's in there too, right?
Yeah, but I think either Phoenix or Golden State is going to end up in the finals again. And then from the Eastern Conference, you have to think about Milwaukee, Miami, Brooklyn if the guys come back healthy and Kyrie Irving decides to stop playing part-time basketball. But that's a whole nother conversation. We can go on and on. But ultimately, Harry Mays, sir, super grateful for you taking the time to come on Chalk It Up Sports. It's humbling. I really take everything you say, with a lot of earnest and a lot of. I think it's important, like I said at the beginning, to remain teachable, right? And I really found a lot of jewels in your path and your story, and I love what you guys do at JAKIB Media, and I love your grind. I love your hustle. I love your commitment to not only your passion but the vision that you had earlier on, and ultimately. I look forward to definitely putting in some more work with you again. This was an amazing experience. You've been great to the show. You've been great to me. And, do you have any final words for the show before you get out of here?
Hey, I tell you, Tone, like I said, be coachable, be versatile, learn as much as you can, start writing a little bit, the more things that you can do yourself, they say, hey man, I can blog, I can do, some video, I can do, radio, I can do all these things. I'm your guy. Like if you can be that guy, and maybe even run the board of a to produce a radio show or whatever, they're going to be like, I got to hire Tone because he can do all these things. I don't need 5 Tones. All I need is one. So that's something that I, tried to learn early on when I was coming up. And, it's really, I thought, helped me in a lot of different situations. So just keep grinding, man, to, keep reaching out to people, to get them on the show, get that word out there through your social media, start a blog, do all kinds of stuff on YouTube, whatever it is, man, just get your name out there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Super grateful for the advice. But on that note, you guys, super grateful for you guys in the live chat who have been interacting. Super grateful for you guys who have been tuning into the chat. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Also, make sure you guys tune into The Middle on JAKIB Media with Barrett Brooks and Harry Mays. Also, tune into Birds 365 and tune into the National Football Show. Those guys are doing amazing things over there, and the sky is the limit for all of us, you guys. Thank you, guys. I'm your humble. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I got a lot more in the works, too.
Oh, man.
I can't tell you about it yet, but I got a lot more coming.
Oh, man. Hey, listen, I'll be watching that. And 9 times out of 10, I'll be reaching out to you to pick your brain about all the other things that you picked up along the way.
Do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But as I always tell you guys, I'm your humble host, Tone DeShields II. You guys were tuned in to Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. One love, stay humble, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay hungry. And we're out of here, you guys.